Hi everyone, welcome to a spooky Halloween spectacular. I know this probably won't be released exactly on Halloween, it might have to be released earlier because I'll be going to the Blender conference and that might mess with timings. But anyway, in this video I just wanted to show you just a fun little project. Nothing particularly complex, but it might be something you might want to, make to show your friends for a laugh and maybe see if you can fool some people. So today I'm going to show you my little alien hoax project. Now it's not exactly like super realistic, but it is a bit of fun, so I'll just show you the video now. Now obviously if you've been doing 3D art for a while, you look at that and go, oh, that's so fake, obviously. Yeah, of course. But I'm running a Spooktober art challenge on my Discord server at the moment, which actually ends on Halloween, and I figured this might be a fun little entry. So anyway, we're over here in Blender, and if we actually take a look at the scene, the way this is composed is by having this square-like corridor with a bunch of holes in the side, and I have emissive light sources here which are kind of bleeding light in. Then I have a humanoid figure which is poking around the corner, and then when we have a look at that, that's not like particularly scary or complex on first look, although that might be a bit freaky to bump into at night in like an abandoned building or something. But no, the real thing which gives it that kind of like fake low quality camcorder look is an extremely high focal length combined with a strong depth of field and then mixed with denoising. So one thing I want to point out to you quickly is that if you look at the result, you'll see that the denoising is creating this flickering effect. And you might look at that and think, oh, that's the dead giveaway, or it looks so fake, so like computer generated. But when you have a look at like zoomed in camcorders and phone video footage, they tend to do this anyway. You'll see the same kind of flickering around like areas of high to low contrast, and it's because there's a lack of light or a lack of data generally, which creates this effect. So I think you can use it artistically. Just to kind of show you the setup, you'll notice that here in the solid view, this is like the longest camera you have ever seen in Blender. It's almost an abomination. You definitely don't have to go this like high on the focal length, but I just wanted to get that like really long lens looking through a forest kind of vibe. And I think that vibe would be more complete if I replaced these wall pieces with like tree trunks. You can kind of imagine that happening, like as we're playing it, you've got the camera wobbling a bit and this alien figure kind of like looking around the side of a tree trunk and bending down slightly. I think that would work quite well. So if you want to compose a scene like this yourself, first of all, if we take a look at the camera settings, you'll notice down here that the focal length says 1.5, but it's actually 1500 because it's being done in millimeters. So when you type in 1500, that'll become 1.5. The thing about having an extremely high focal length like this is that when you go to position the camera, so like the way I would typically do it is by going to F3 and typing walk, and then kind of moving the mouse. I don't actually do it like that because I've bound my walk mode to Shift F. That just lets me jump into it straight away. You'll notice that as I move the mouse, it's extremely sensitive, and we're covering quite a wide angle with just like a tiny amount of input. So that's one downside to using a very high focal length. But one way you can get around that is obviously by changing the rotation value up here in the N panel up here. So if you hold Shift and then scrub those values, it will do it at a much finer increment. Also, you'll notice on the camera that we have the depth of field active with an object DOF as the target. Now DOF, meaning depth of field, is literally placed right here, kind of very close to the camera, relatively speaking. So basically everything in the distance is going to be blurred, but the way we can kind of finally control that level of blurring is by adjusting the f-stop value. So I've set it up really high. It's at 250 now. If I set that down to 0, we'll get nothing. Maybe like 50, it's going to be extremely blurred. So this may be a value you could animate. Say if you wanted like that really long distance subject to kind of come in and out of focus, like as it's kind of moving through the trees, if we think about it that way, then you can set that to like a higher or a lower f-stop value. Alternatively, you could just move the depth of field. That might be a bit messier. Maybe that'll be okay if you're like tracking a target. So you have like different options available for how you want to do it. If you just want to animate one value, then the f-stop is a pretty good one to use. One thing you'll notice is that throughout the animation, the camera also kind of wobbles a bit as our animation is progressing. Now, you might think, okay, this character looks pretty jank. That's all right though, because if I click on the character, we have the specularity set to 0 because this is all about the silhouette. Welcome to rule number 1 of visual effects. You only need to put in as much effort as is required to get the end result. So if we're only working with a silhouette, what's the point in animating the hand properly? It doesn't matter. Like, so long as the silhouette gives us exactly what we want, then no extra effort is required. So anyway, the way you would kind of animate the camera to do this noise thing is something that I know a lot of people already know how to do. It's a very popular method. Essentially, set a keyframe at the beginning of your timeline and then set another keyframe at the end. So you have data there that your camera is moving from one position to another position for the beginning and the end, even if it's the same position. Go to the graph editor where we have our inputs for the X, Y, and Z rotation, and I tend to select them all, press F3, although I've bound my search bar to space, then type in noise, and you'll see an option here for key, add F-curve modifier, noise. When you do that, it's going to add a new noise modifier in the modifiers tab of the N panel here. So if you press N, it's going to open and close that toolbar. I already have a noise modifier active, so I don't need this, but you'll notice that you get these kind of like long graph lines. Depending on which value you have selected, like the X, Y, or Z, which will tend to appear in like different areas, you can adjust like the scale and the strength. By the way, even though in the shader editor, a lower scale usually gives you like a kind of wider breadth of a pattern, in this noise modifier, a larger scale gives you a wider breadth, if that makes sense. So it's almost like the inverted value. So you want to go up when getting a larger pattern rather than down when you're using this noise value, and then you can adjust the strength. But anyway, when you're working at the extremely high focal length, again like we are, you want to use very, very fine values. So that's why if we actually take a look at my original one here, for the Euler rotation or Euler rotation, I know someone's gonna have a go at me for that. Pick and choose your pronunciation as we go. I'll say it a few more times just to like counter the Euler. Euler, 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 Euler. Okay, there you go, substitute it. Anyway, you'll see that I have the scale of 21 and the strength of 0.001, which is a very, very fine value. But it's again, because high focal length, very sensitive. As I play it back, you'll see we get like some slight adjustment going on. So you'll do that for the X, Y, and the Z. If you have a character, there's not too much animation you need to do. I mean, it depends like how much you want going on. So for example, if you have a character with IK, like I do here, this is one of my characters from the rigged base characters pack, definitely not like super professionally put together. I just use it for my demonstrations and stuff. You would have seen it in my recent video about studio design if you watched that, which I recommend if you're interested in kind of like interior visualization and how visualizing your spaces can help you kind of rearrange how you're going to build them in the future for like renovation projects and new builds and stuff like that. Anyway, so using IK is interesting because it means that you can just move one bone while animating like all different parts of the body, if that makes sense. So you only really need to adjust a few values to like get something basic going and kind of giving the illusion that, oh, is this alien kind of like doing a bit of a peek around the corner? So you really don't need to do too much. Again, especially since we're relying on a silhouette, we don't need to worry too much about finite animation. Now, okay, let's talk about denoising, because you'll notice that in the viewport here, I am using denoising to preview this. I've got noise threshold disabled, and this is actually using the optics denoiser, even though I have it set to automatic. But you'll notice I actually have this disabled in the render. So how are we doing the denoising? If I go to the compositor, a trick I like using that I actually picked up from one of my moderators, Technical, is once we've done a render, so I'll do that now just to show you, only up to a sample of 50. What you might have noticed there is that if I bypass the denoising, this is the actual render result. It looks awful. What are all these fireflies? What's all this color? Well, here's the thing. I know that going for like this super zoomed in look, we're going to be blending everything together to get that flickering effect. Now, how can we creatively add some aura-like color to our subject? Well, if you've been around on my channel for a while, you know I love playing with emissive lighting and how to kind of creatively use it for effects. So consider the following. Notice in our 3D scene that our weird wacko looking character is standing in front of a flat, bright surface which is pointing towards the camera. If we hover some emissive objects like this blue emissive glow stick, if you want to think about it that way, and a green one, this light is going to be emitting in a kind of radial pattern from the surface. So that's going to bounce off like everywhere it can. It's actually just going to go off into empty space in this direction, but it's going to bounce off the wall here and then back towards the camera. So what we will see are these fireflies kind of clustering around these reflective areas, also this wall here. So it's kind of focusing around this character, which isn't actually giving us much because the specularity is set to 0. So what we will get is this general aura where the fireflies are most clustered around the character. Notice that they are green and blue as well because we have green and blue glow sticks. Anyway, the reason this is useful from our artistic perspective is that when we set the denoising value high enough, they will blend into the scene. So now we have a greeny blue aura around our alien, and we could change that color to whatever we like. So just to show you this denoising technique in a bit more detail, we take the actual image output, we pass it into the denoiser, so that's going to denoise the image. And then we're going to mix the two together, the original image, and then the denoised version is going to go into the second one there. And then we can adjust that on a factor value. So if we set the factor really low, we're going to be using more of the original undenoised image. And then as we set that higher, we're going to progressively denoise it more and more. So you can actually see here how you can leave in some fireflies if you want to for artistic effect. But as we turn that up, we're going to be removing them more and more. Now for my values, I want to keep that really high so we do actually actually catch all of the fireflies. So you're actually going to be going really, really close to 1.0, not necessarily up to the full amount. This will again depend on like the lighting qualities in your scene, how many fireflies you have going on. So you could leave a few more in there if you want to, just for like, I don't know, data artifacts or something, but it's really up to you. So at the end of it, we have what looks like a black and white film image with a colored aura around this silhouette of our alien. And when you actually render out the full animation, you'll see that we get that flickering effect as well. Now, some of you out there might hate this and think, oh, it just looks so fake, but I think it's kind of fun. Like, you can do some really weird things with this. So like, here's a really freaky thing. Let me like just give you an idea for something to do and hide like these light objects. They've been parented to the character there. Okay, so now we're just working with a silhouette. I can imagine someone doing something really freaky here in a forest scene. So you know that thing that armatures do, like where you move the mesh away from the bones? Okay, like you know when it does that, which is already a little bit freaky by itself. Now consider this. Something starts from behind the trees. It's coming out. What's it doing? Oh, is that like a head? It's poking its head around the corner. Oh, it's crouching down. It's stretching. What the hell is going on here? Oh, what are we in, like some kind of weird backrooms? What kind of creature is that? Oh, what's going on? Like, do you see what I mean? I like this visual. I can imagine people doing it for like those weird, creepy YouTube videos where they kind of discuss dark fantasy, creepy pasta narrations and stuff like that. So actually, like, I kind of like the potential. Maybe you think it's stupid. Maybe you think it's fun. I don't really mind. So there is another thing as well. We are actually using a bit of a world volume. Now I'm in the world nodes here. This HDRI and color background node actually comes from my Modular Workspaces add-on and asset library, and I'm adjusting the volume density here. Obviously if it's too high you won't be able to see, but if it's on 0 then it still looks kind of freaky and weird, but we don't really have that atmospheric going on. You obviously don't need this node. You can replace this with a principled volume or a volume scatter node. So let's do principled volume, plug the volume in, turn the density down to 0.001 or something, maybe a bit higher than that, 0.005. There we go. So you get the same kind of volume thing going, very spooky. And also, let me turn that down a bit. I do have a spotlight, which is kind of just like hovering below the source of the camera. And what it's doing is it's bleeding light in front of the camera. So this will help us also give a kind of like exposure. So it's on 600 watts at the moment. Let me put that up to like 2000. And you'll see again that we can kind of like illuminate the volume. Again, you don't necessarily need to use a light for this. You could also adjust like the color of the volume and also increase its density. But I think they do kind of behave a bit differently. I think it's like you get better performance using the light instead. It's up to you. That's like another like potentially animatable value if you want to play with that. So yeah, like not too complex of a project. It's actually quite easy to do. Again, since we're just working with silhouettes, you can imagine these as walls or like tree trunks, and you can replace these with any objects you like. What I've done is I've put this file on my Patreon. So that's for second tier members and above. So like the $5 tier and above, depending on like what country you're in. So if you want to download it and grab it from there, then you can sign up. Also, thankfully, Patreon has just moved over to this thing where the day of the month you sign up is the day of the month you'll be charged again in following months. For some reason, this wasn't a thing before, and it would just charge you on the next 1st of every month. But thankfully, I've swapped over to the more traditional subscription model, so that's a lot easier for everyone to understand. I'm so glad they've done that. Anyway, yeah, the file is available on there if you want to play with it. Anyway, if you made it this far through the video, make sure to put an alien emoji in the comments, or if there's no alien one, maybe like a ghost or something Halloween-y, I'll understand. Feel free to check out the other videos on my channel. We've got a wide variety of projects, tool videos, news pieces, community roundups, and all sorts. You can also sign up to my Patreon again to get your name put on this Hall of Patrons evolving artwork. I should probably do a new version of this soon. And also consider heading over to my store at curtishull.online/store. There's like all kinds of products and resources that you can use to enhance your Blender artwork. I recommend checking out my procedural material collections. Modular Metals is actually one I've been using for like everything, even non-metallic projects. Actually, let me just come on over to another project I'll probably talk about soon. It's like a kind of cultural project I've been doing, but like all of the materials in this have been using modular metals, even though they're not metallic, or not all of them. So I have these kind of like faience/clay or ceramic materials, and they're all just variations of this mega shader I have in the modular metals one, which was designed to kind of combine iron and copper in a creative way, just to make some interesting new styles. But now I've been using it for like everything. It's like my mega shader, which is like appropriate given the name. So like these stone tablets here with the imperfections and like the slight curvature and edge detection, that's the mega shader. Again, these faience cards, figurines, Mega Shader. These currency pieces are actually like another material from that pack, like archaeology, but this pottery work is the Mega Shader anyway. So that's just to say that I've actually been using it a lot, so I recommend checking out that product if you want like a good variety of options for your procedural materials. Anyway, I'll talk more about that soon. Happy, potentially early Halloween, everyone. It's my favorite holiday. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time.